This is XDefiant. We're here on Xbox Series X. Be sure to like the video. Subscribing is great as well. We're here for the full release of the game, which has finally arrived after many server tests, and I think a couple of years at least of trying it and playing it. And yeah, now we're here at the launch, finally enjoying what this game has to offer. A free-to-play tactical mismatch of Ubisoft IPs. It's basically like, to a degree, generic shooter, the video game, but then they've got all these different iconic franchises from Ubisoft thrown together in one crazy sort of thing. And you know what? It's not bad. Like, it's not bad at all. It's actually at times kind of fun, chaotic, and very fast-paced, as you have to really adapt to the combat, the style, the weapons, and just the flow of it across a selection of, it's like 5 different launch game modes that are present, some being large in scale, some a little bit more medium-sized. So what are we getting here? Well, we've got 2 different graphical options. Right now we're on, I guess you would say, the quality mode, as to say, which is the default mode most people will play on. This is a dynamic 4K resolution at 60 FPS. And you know what? It is buttery smooth, runs absolutely fine, looks really good visually, the environments are well done. Very good way to play this game. There's also HDR support. Cool, right? And then we can switch to the, under the settings, we can switch to the 120 FPS mode. So that will take us a little bit of a lower graphical fidelity, but then give us 120 FPS. There's also the option to adjust the FOV, with 100 being the default. So you can adjust that along with a number of other kind of settings in regards to how you shoot and how you interact with everything like that. So here, this really does feel like, to me, the way to play this game if you have a TV that supports it. So I can record at it now, thanks to Elgato's modern graphical capture card technology. But yeah, so it's like a dynamic 1440p at 120 FPS, and it looks great, and it feels way better to play. You get better response times. Typically I do perform better too when I'm playing at this higher frame rate, as you're just able to react to it. And sadly YouTube, still doesn't support that, so I can't, really showcase it to you truly how it is, but you at least can visually get an idea of how the fidelity changes when you drop down to this mode. But yeah, it does seem to be pretty smooth, pretty consistent, and I'd say really genuinely, if you have the 120 hertz, 120 FPS option TV, that this is kind of the way to go about playing this. I love how I turn on the high frame rate, but I keep getting shot in the back. It's like it's an omen or something like that. So you're competing with up to 12 players in a bunch of different matches and maps across a variety of locales based on, again, the, I guess you would say, Ubisoft universes. So it was originally a Tom Clancy game. Then they took that naming convention off as they added some additional franchises, like they've got like Far Cry and I guess Watch Dogs, which I actually don't believe is, I don't think it is a Tom Clancy franchise, which is interesting. But yeah, they've kind of matched them all together, and some of them they all have their different unique, is it because my teammates are kind of leaving? Yeah, that makes sense. They all have their own unique abilities, like the Far Cry folks, they sort of do this healing thing. The Splinter Cell crew, which is what I'm playing as, they have like a bit of like a cloak stealth, and then there's an ultimate where you kind of do like a quick pistol sort of thing. They're all different in terms of what they offer. There's like one's a shielding one, so they all do something a little unique and different, and something that offers you, I guess you would say, new combative ways to tackle and take on the scenarios around you. And yeah, they all offer something a little bit fresh and unique for combat, and it's best to sort of play around with them and get a feel for what you like in terms of combat and skill stuff. Like, I do find the Far Cry team to be very effective, just because you can do that, like healing and team healing. And this is a game that is entirely focused on objective play, which I quite enjoy. I like objective games. And there's a hotshot mode, which is more like a regicide from Halo kind of thing, where you get like a super powered, moving fast kind of ability thing. But for the most part, This is very much focused on like doing objective things like domination, or on the larger maps, which don't seem to have as much population love from players and don't seem to pop up as much as they were during the testing, waiting wise. You have these like very, very large scale levels, and they're based around things such as like escorting a robot across the map with supplies or capturing larger zones. So yeah, they do kind of have a variety of things, and then, you know, domination. There's occupy, which is kind of a little bit of a twist on that, and they got a variety here. But I do like that it is very much focused on actually like playing an objective, moving forward, and trying to get things done as a team. It does seem like matches are relatively close too, I've noticed, in terms of like scores and stuff. Like we tend to, I tend to lose in this game, but it'll always be a heartbreaking defeat or something, or a close loss is what it'll be, and we'll lose by like basically 10 points, which is a bit disheartening and a little annoying to have to deal with, but that's just how she goes sometimes. And I think that in itself is a little funny that that is the case, where oh, those face huggers are so annoying. where that is the kind of the case in the scenario, and what you have to deal with when playing this game is, yeah, I guess really what it comes down to is it feels usually pretty balanced. You know, some matches I really do insanely well, and others it's kind of like so. It really depends on the randomness of the players and everything you get. And this game does have like the casual mode, and then there is a ranked mode that's kind of in testing. Like, it's weird because there's also like it's well kind of like, I don't know the best to describe it, but it's like it's pretty well polished, but at the same time there are like some really annoying bugs that are kind of present in this game. One of them sort of being, I'll throw a grenade, but it'll just fall flat on the ground right where I am at. Instead of actually going where I throw it, it just like immediately drops on the floor, which is a little crazy to me because, you know, I've actually blown myself up with grenades a few times, being like, oh, why didn't the grenade move forward? See, close loss. And we'll jump into the next match. There is a level of customization in regards to changing up how your characters sort of are in terms of their abilities and what they offer, and the different factions have unique elements to them, and it is about playing around with, you know, which particular faction you think best fits your gameplay style as you move around the environments, and trying to get the best advantage for your playstyle, really, right? That's what it's all about. And then you can take that customization or personalization a little further, as you can have custom classes with custom guns, and then you level up your guns in order to actually be able to get better attachments and things and adjust the balance. Sort of, you know, create a class, which has been a thing for ages. Very much in your typical shooter, Call of Duty type sort of scenario, where you are... Oh, this person's really after me. Where you are... There's another person there too? Holy. So you got different loadouts and different guns, and I've mostly spent my time with the M4 because I've been... The medium range seems to be the combat style in this game, because close encounters are a bit awkward. But I will say that there is a plethora of different weapons and tools and little things that you can use to annihilate your foes and move around and battle and everything like that. But going back to the bugs, I do find also that sniper rifles are very much kind of broken in the game at the moment, where they're free insta-kills almost, and it's... Well, they are, but a bit odd. So there's some balancing things too on top of some other little bugs. And there was one scenario where like the audio got all weird and the game sort of crashed, but you know, that was one kind of moment after so many hours of streaming. I've really been packing in the hours, and yeah, for the most part this game just runs absolutely flawlessly smooth. Action-packed gameplay, it just works really well. Then we've got a great selection of maps, and the maps all look really quite good. They're ripped from other Ubisoft games, so basically they're just sort of combining the technology and just taking these things from other Ubisoft franchises and turning them into competitive multiplayer maps for this particular offering, which I think is a fascinating and smart way to kind of more quickly create levels for the game. So that was smart. But if you've played a lot of other Ubisoft franchises like myself, a lot of it will feel relatively familiar because they literally are parts of other Ubisoft series. Same with all the characters just being taken from, you know, Far Cry and Watch Dogs and Rainbow Six and everything like that. I'm sure over time they're probably going to add more characters from more teams, and we're going to see this expanded upon. It'd be cool if there's guest characters from non-Ubisoft stuff as well. I wonder if that'll be a thing. As in Rainbow Six, they've got other franchises that have sort of popped in there, and, you know, even Halo and stuff, which I think is kind of interesting. Not saying that they'll necessarily add that to this game, but it's not, to me, out of the realms of possibility that we see that sort of thing being put into this. Oh, come on. Yeah, sometimes it's a little tiring, as I usually go a little bit more hardcore on this, but it's all random what you get with the lobbies, right? Especially since apparently they don't do the skill-based matchmaking thing unless you're in the ranked mode. So it's more of a traditional lobby setup, which is neat. And it's just, it comes together in a pretty pleasing way. There is actually a good selection of maps and environments. You get a good variety of scenes and combative areas to battle, and more traditional, I would say, map flows compared to the mismatch of stuff you get for newer shooter games where they're always trying to push the envelope in odd ways for maps and stuff. This really does feel traditional for that kind of thing. Yeah, it kind of hits me as like a shooter from like an earlier time almost, but at the same time it kind of gives me like Crossfire X vibes, which is sort of hilarious, but I think a little better polished almost, as to say, in comparison. And I just say in general, this is, it's kind of an odd scenario, because I do, again, find this kind of fun. I do find this okay, but I was hoping that they would have more content added to this one. For the launch, I was a little, like, there's a lot of maps, there's a lot of things, but having played this over all the server tests, I'm basically sitting here being, oh, I've played all of these maps and areas, and I know them all already, and I was just kind of hoping for more map surprises. So hopefully the content drip is fast in this one, because they've had so much time to, I guess you would say, prep and prepare things, and it's a little easier when you're taking from pre-existing assets and whatnot too, I would imagine. So yeah, it's just a bit weird that they didn't have like a new launch map surprise, as to say. Almost a little bummed out by that. But I'd say at the end of the day, it's a pretty competent package. It gets the job done. It can be kind of enjoyable. You know, I'm sure they'll balance and tweak things out, as it does feel really, really quick, and it feels pretty floaty, if that makes sense, which is, how do you, like, anyways, doesn't matter. It's, which you either kind of like or you don't, and for me it just feels a little, like, unnatural, like flying across the floor, and that's the thing, is it's a tactical shooter, but not really, you know what I mean? It's got the inspirations of Tom Clancy games, but it doesn't necessarily play like one, which is fascinating that this sort of is their big live service kind of game from Ubisoft. But I really, I don't mind it. As I said, I like this. I think I can have some fun playing this. Is it going to keep my interest long term? I'm not too sure. But for now, it's being a pretty enjoyable time. Aside of me not getting lots of kills while I'm trying to do my review to look really good and fancy, but you get what I'm saying. It's just competently well put together. I don't really know how wild people will find this game's identity, as to say, as it is just sort of, you know, you can't really say derivative, because it is on purpose taking parts of other Ubisoft games to compete and be its own sort of thing. But yeah, it does feel almost too familiar, because it is something that is a mismatched combination of things we've already played. So I don't really know if this will last. It would be fascinating if this becomes that next hot shooter kind of thing. I don't know if it really necessarily has that potential, but I sort of find it in the realms where it is worth giving a try to, if you do find this to be kind of intriguing. I mean, it's free to play, so it never hurts from that, you know, particular metric to give a free to play game a try. It's just whether or not you find the concept of it enticing, or if you find it sort of like, oh, it's just a bunch of Ubisoft stuff together. At least it is a little different from other Ubisoft things we've gotten recently, and I don't know, like this one really is bizarre to me. I do wish they'd have more of a matchmaking weighting on the escort missions and the larger scale levels. Just because it does seem a lot, it feels flipped from the test stuff, because I'm sure this stuff kind of feeling more COD-like in nature. You know, domination stuff probably was more interesting to people, but to me, the coolness of this game does come from its elements of those larger, more dynamic maps that aren't just tight little chaotic battles, but have a little bit more depth and stuff going on to them as you're actually pushing objectives across a map as opposed to taking rings and stuff. And I do ponder how much they're going to like expand the scope of objectives in this, because it does seem like there's a good selection of modes, and if there'll be a player base to support even more. But let's jump into another match here. Thought for the final battle that we should show off at least one of the larger maps. So here is the Escort mission in action, where we get this robot going across, like I've mentioned. It just allows for a little different style of gameplay, where it is more progressional and more like something you would see in a traditional Overwatch pushing and shoving kind of mode, which this game does actually do a good job of, because it feels really competitive, especially with the spawn options, moving back and forth and the like for this one. So I think really at the end of the day, when you're looking at this game, it comes down to the element of whether or not you find this gameplay concept or mismatch to be interesting or intriguing, and if it's something that will be of long-term interest to you, because that is my big question that I really do kind of sit there and ponder, like, is this going to be something that I'm playing for the long term? And I think a lot of that comes down to content and gameplay, because it does, as I've mentioned, to some degree feel like a bit of a generic shooter, and I was hoping that there would be a bit more of an interesting edge to it. I don't mind it. I really don't. Like I actually find it kind of fun and engaging and intense, but there is an element where I do wish there was just some little bit more of a hook. I do hope that they fix up some of the things, like the snipers, again, are basically like free insta-kills, and some of the bullet lag is a bit odd. But other elements of the game I find fun and enjoyable. It's just like a really easily accessible shooter game, and I think it could fit that sort of free-to-play niche well for those that want a competitive shooter as a free-to-play kind of offering, and just to be able to sit there and have like a good, I guess you would say, party game to a degree. See, it's just they're broken. I'd call the snipers broken at this point. And you can just jump in and be like, hey, let's hop on XDefiant, which in itself, terrible naming convention. I'm just gonna throw that out there. I don't understand what XDefiant even means. As I mentioned, it was at one point a Tom Clancy's game, and then they rebranded it, or they took away the Tom Clancy branding, which makes sense because it's not really a Tom Clancy tactical sort of game, right? Just kind of this weird thrown together mismatching and mixed matching, and you know, it's like a mixtape of weirdness, which I don't mind, honestly. It kind of works for it. It does, and it's easygoing and not too difficult. And I haven't found anything too crazily unbalanced, and I like the variety of levels. I just, again, since I had spent so much time streaming the tests and everything like that, since it was sort of first conceptualized or presented, I just sort of was hoping that they'd have a little bit more of a new surprise. Because if you're coming off of the testing pre-release here, the game has essentially not changed, aside from maybe having a few more little bugs here or there that weren't totally present beforehand. But I think you can enjoy this one. I think there is a decent amount of offerings. As a shooter, it gets the job done. I like that they give you different performance modes. I like the polish of the quality of the visuals. It feels like a really well, competently put together shooter that will blow your mind. I don't know, it's fun, it's engaging. I haven't really disliked anything that I've played in it. I just also sort of in the mindset of being like, hey, you know, it's not out of the box anything different or too quirky. And I do ponder just long-term intrigue and interest in this one once I get my achievements, if I'm going to be sitting here just packing in hours. It's really genuinely hard to say for this. This is the most, I'm not sure how this one's going to go from a community perspective, game I've ever played. But who knows, maybe this is that next big hit and it delivers well and people love it and enjoy it and play it. So for me, I give it a pretty solid offering. I'd say you can kind of have fun playing this game and enjoy the shooting elements of it.